Hey, friends! Just so you know, we enjoy the swear word and we rely on good old fashioned humor to get through some seriously dark subject matter. At no time do we intend any disrespect toward the victims or families of the victims in the cases we cover. Also, be sure to listen to the end for a few palate cleansing bloopers to reset your mindset. And with that, we thank you for listening and we hope you enjoy.
Hey friends, welcome to Crime Will Tell. I'm Jamie.
I am Carrie.
How you doing?
I am doing good.
Excellent.
Yeah, you look a little sweltery there.
Yeah,
How
yep.
you doing?
So, record in my laundry room. It's a very tiny space. Can't have fans going because they make noise, and I don't
Mhm.
have air conditioning. So, all in all, when it's 90 fucking degrees today, she damp. Is all I can
Well,
say.
and I checked the dew point and it is closing in on 70, which is tropical. So,
I'm cleansing. This is a sauna-like situation.
absolutely.
I'm
You
gonna
are going to be
feel
detoxed.
amazing.
Amazing. Yep,
Yeah.
detoxed.
Anyway. Whew.
Yeah, so what are you drinking?
I am drinking Four Roses small batch of
Oh my god, you are
bourbon.
so brave. So you're drinking bourbon in your hot ass laundry room.
Yeah, I should be
Yeah.
drinking Gatorade, but instead I'm drinking some bourbon and it's tasty. What you sipping on, girl?
Yeah, so I don't have bourbon today because hot. So I have a vodka cocktail. Drinking carbless. It's like a 100 calorie, no carb, no gluten, whatever. I eat gluten like a motherfucker, but it's like a really no carb, 100 calories kind of drink. It's perfect for a summer day, hot summer
Yeah,
day.
and they're tasty.
Yeah, I think I'm drinking key like lemon lime right now, and then I've got number 2 in the wings waiting,
Oh my.
and I think that one's pineapple, and I'll go get
Ooh.
3 and 4 and possibly 5 in a little bit.
And I'll be like, that looks so cold and refreshing.
Woohoo!
Woo! Okay. This case is fucking sad
Mm.
and incredibly frustrating.
Ooh,
A lot of cases are. This one really gets me fired up. Are you ready for this
yeah.
journey? Okay. So we're going to go to.
Wait, we totally forgot to
Oh,
say
I'm
cheers and clink.
sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. Well,
So,
cheers, my friend.
cheers, my friend.
Clink. Sip, sip, sip.
Mm, mm.
Mm,
Okay.
that is refreshing. I'm going to pour it on my body. Okay. So. We are going to take just a little step back in time and go. We're going to go to January of 2013.
Okay.
And we're going to the West Coast. We're going to go to Yuba City, California,
Okay.
which is a small city that's about like 40 miles north of Sacramento. And we're going to talk about a lovely woman named Leola Shreves.
That's a cute name,
I
Leola.
know, Leola, isn't it cute? Just wait. Just wait for cuteness.
Oh, she's fucking cute, isn't she?
She's fucking precious.
Mm,
I have,
fucking
yeah, just wait. Okay.
okay.
So Leola Shreves was born on July 30th, 1918, in Illinois. So if you're not great at math, in 2013, Leola was 94 years old. So Leola's husband, Merle, passed away in 2001.
His name was Merle?
Yeah,
We've
Leola
got
and
Leola
Merle.
and Merle?
Is
Oh
that not
my,
like cutest
I
fucking
can't
country duo
even.
you ever heard?
I want them to be my grandparents.
Just wait. So Merle passed away in 2001, and after his death, Leola lived alone in their home. She was like incredibly independent. She was super active, sharp as a fucking tack. She loved reading books on history, and at 94 she still drove. So she wasn't
Wow.
relying on people to take her to doctor's appointments or the grocery store. She was doing it. Like she
But was
was
she safe about it? She still had her faculties about her?
I mean, I don't know.
At 94, I mean, could she still see?
I mean, I didn't set up cones and make her parallel park or anything, but I think she I think she was doing well.
Yeah.
But so she was known by her friends as Dodie. And a lot of people close to her and in her neighborhood called her Grandma Dodie.
Okay, I can't even with these cute ass names.
I know. Is this not just so fucking precious? So she was kind of like the pseudo grandma for the entire neighborhood. And she loved being an actual grandmother to her grandkids, who most of them, if not all of them, lived nearby and were a huge part of her life. So she had 22 great grandchildren and 13 great great grandchildren.
Holy mother. Yeah, I mean, 94, I mean, it's almost 100 years.
Yeah. But she obviously had like tons of grandkids who she adored and they adored her.
She either had a lot of kids or she had enough and they were trying to get their own TLC show.
If her name was Leola Duggar, I would be like,
Makes sense.
there it is. So she had been in that neighborhood for a very long time and she was just incredibly like well known and loved, just a fixture of this neighborhood. She loved cooking and baking, and like a lot of women of that generation, she wanted to feed everybody.
Mhm.
Food was love.
You look thin. Let me whip up a
Yeah.
peach pie for you.
Do you need a snack? Come get a snack. So she just was just one of those just giving, caring people and fed you. She liked to feed you.
Mhm.
So on January 21st of 2013, Ronald Smith, who was Leola's son-in-law, went to Leola's home to check on her because no one had heard from her in a few days, which was really rare. Like I said, a lot of her family was in that area. She spoke with them very frequently. And so this was really unusual, and they were worried about her. Unfortunately, when Ronald got to the house, he found Leola's dead body.
Mm.
He immediately called 911 and told the dispatcher that her body was cold when he touched her, trying to check for a pulse. So, police, of course, were called to the home and found a brutal crime scene. The house that Leola had always kept very neat and tidy had been ransacked. There was a smashed TV on the kitchen floor. Photos that were framed on the wall had been taken off and thrown around. There were utensils tossed all over the kitchen and broken glass everywhere. And the door to her bedroom had actually been ripped off the hinges.
Wow.
Just a quick trigger warning, these details are rough and make me just so goddamn sad. Leola was found face down on the floor of her bedroom next to her bed, and she was wearing a pink nightgown, which makes me
Mm, of
think of my
course.
grandmother. And the walker that she used was kind of found underneath her, but kind of crumpled and under her body a little bit. She had massive injuries to her head and had been badly beaten, likely by the metal cane that she used
Oh
and that
my
was found next
god.
to her with blood on it. After examining the body, it was discovered that she had a broken back,
Oh
a
my
broken
god.
jaw and teeth, and 17 of her 24 ribs were broken. And she had been strangled to the point that her ears and her scalp were almost ripped away from her skull.
What?
Yeah. I'm thinking that there was some sort of ligature that was pulled so tight that her ears and the scalp back here were pulling away from her skull.
Oh my god.
It didn't go
Oh
into
my
too much
god.
detail, but it was in relation to the strangulation. So, yes, I'm going to take a little sip after that. I want to like
Cleanse. This is
cry.
terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, elderly people and kids, like,
Yeah.
she was not about hurting anybody.
No. She had defensive wounds on her hands, so she fought as hard as she could against her attacker. Investigators estimated that she was killed either the night of January 18th or really early the morning of January 19th. And they based this I mean, kind of, I guess, after talking to family and figuring out when people had heard from her last, but also there was an unread newspaper from January 19th at her house. And she also hadn't taken the medications in her pill organizer for that morning,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
before she would have woken up and taken her morning medications.
Yeah. So then you said his name was Ronald found her son-in-law
Hmm.
found her on the 21st.
Yes.
That's why she was cold. She was already through rigor mortis. Yeah.
Yeah. So police obviously started looking for evidence inside the house, and they found jewelry and a large amount of cash inside the home. So it didn't really seem initially like robbery was the motive, which was kind of odd since the house had been ransacked. But they found shoe prints and fingerprints. They also found hair on Leola's nightgown, DNA under her fingernails. There was blood found all over the house, not only from Leola, but also from the killer.
Oh.
And there was actually a trail of blood that went from her home and then down the fucking street.
That wasn't her.
So police believe that her attacker had been badly cut while crawling through a broken bathroom window into her house. And so they had obviously like bled while they were attacking her and then as they left the home. So this was just absolutely horrifying. And because it was such a messy crime scene, it seemed like investigators would have a lot of evidence to work with to help catch the person who killed Leola.
When you said that utensils were flung all about the kitchen, that
Hmm.
just seemed odd. Usually, robbers will go to closets, the master bedroom, stuff like that. They don't usually throw utensils all over the place. It's
Yeah.
so when you said that, I was like, oh, I wonder if this was staged to look like a robbery.
Yeah. If they were looking for money, I don't know why they were going through spatulas. But as the house was being, thoroughly searched for evidence, police all of a sudden started hearing loud screams coming from the house next door. And so of course they're like, what the balls is going on? So they go over to the next door neighbor's house and they find a guy named Michael Alexander and his sister. So police are like, "Yo, man, what's up? You good?" And they could see that he was visibly nervous, talking to the police. His hands were shaking. And Michael had told them that he had been yelling in his house because he got upset while playing a video game. So he was just pissed off and yelling, like, at the screen or whatever. Police asked both Michael and his sister, who at this point were like standing on their front porch, to pull up their pant legs because they knew they were looking for injuries. So they're like, "Hey, why don't you go ahead and pull up your pants?" And they noticed that there was a wound on Michael's leg, like right above his knee. It's not like he scraped his knee, it was like above his kneecap. And he told him that he had scraped his leg on a door that day. But investigators are like, okay, we'll see. So Michael had already been on police's radar because they'd previously spoken with him and when they were kind of just talking to neighbors and canvassing the area, and he had offered police some kind of weird ass details. They, of course, were like, "Hey, did you hear anything strange the night that, we believe that Leola had been attacked?" And he told them that he thought he heard a cat outside climbing a fence.
What does that sound like? Like specifically a cat climbing a fence.
Like, a cat can jump up on a kitchen counter and be there in your face before you even fucking know it because they're so agile.
And they're like fucking ninjas.
Yeah, they're incredibly quiet. So, unless they were cats in heat climbing the fence, I don't know that you would recognize that that happened. Detectives had actually gone out. They looked at this fence. It was a very sturdy, like wooden fence, and they're like, no cat would even like make this creak. So it just seemed like a very odd thing for him to have told them, and probably just not accurate. Detectives were like, maybe this guy is the loud cat and he actually hurt his knee climbing a fence or climbing through the window to get into Leola's home. So because of his very suspicious behavior, detectives ended up getting a warrant to search the Alexander's home.
And remind me, you said this home is right next door
Yeah,
to
right next
Leola's?
door. Yeah.
Okay.
They wanted to get this warrant, but they also started, of course, digging into his history. And Michael Alexander was 20 years old
Oh,
at
he's
this time.
young.
So they're looking into his past, and they learned that he had moved into the house next door to Leola with his mother Audra and older sister Ashley in 2010. So this would have been, 3 years or so before
Yeah.
she was murdered, and I think that they just weren't close. He knew who she was, but there wasn't like a significant relationship.
Mm.
And so as they're digging into him, they learn a little bit more about him and find that he is a gamer. This dude fucking loved video games and Pokemon. If he wasn't playing video games, he was watching other people play them online, and he was just kind of a loner. He had very few friends, was pretty much home a lot by himself playing video games.
Okay.
And they learned that he struggled with emotional and intellectual disabilities.
Oh, okay.
He had been placed in a special education program starting at the age of 3, and as a child, but when he was a little bit older, he was tested and found to have a very low IQ.
Mm.
Just throughout his childhood, he was diagnosed with depression, attention deficit disorder, and PTSD from an incident earlier in his childhood. I couldn't find any details on that. It just kind of said it was something that he wouldn't really discuss, but I don't know what that incident was.
Hmm.
Reports obtained from his schools noted that he had severe anger issues and would have outbursts at school. And so he'd been suspended for fighting with other students.
So he was aggressive.
Yeah. And when he was 15, he was actually arrested for threatening to kill one of his teachers and burn down the school. And this was after he had a fight where he choked another student.
Oh
So,
my.
not great. He was placed on probation for that offense and ended up getting expelled from Yuba City High School. So, this violent behavior and his close proximity to Leola's home made, Michael the prime suspect basically right away. The warrant came through, and his home was searched by investigators about a week after the murder. And by searched, I mean that a fucking SWAT team with guns drawn approached their house. He was taken by police to the police station for questioning in his pajamas in the middle of the night. And while searching the house, police took a baseball bat, a computer, his video game consoles, and some shoes and clothing that belonged to him.
Do we know if the police decided to bring a SWAT team in the middle of the night? I get why they did it in the middle of the night. You have a much better chance of the person being there. But I wonder if they brought a SWAT team because of the threats, both verbal and physical, that he had made in the past about killing people, choking a student, threatening to kill a teacher.
They tried to take suspects by surprise.
Mhm.
That if you're woken up in the middle of the night, you don't have time to find a weapon, you don't have time to hide, you don't have like you're just really taken off
Thank
guard.
God he
So,
wears pajamas when he goes to bed.
yeah, right? I wonder what kind of jammies they were. Probably Pokemon.
For sure.
So he was taken to the police station for questioning, and detectives spoke with him for over 3 hours at the station, again in the middle of the night. But they were very adamant about clarifying that it was just an interview, wasn't an interrogation. And since he came willingly to the station, which wasn't really true because his house was fucking raided by a SWAT team and they took him to the station and in his fucking pajamas, but whatever. So because of that, he was not read his Miranda rights. And
There's no way that he understood. If he has a low IQ, like a low IQ, like enough to be like, "Oh, this person has a low IQ." He doesn't
yeah,
understand what's going
yeah,
on. He doesn't understand that he has a voice with police officers. They're figures of authority, and maybe that's why he was trembling and nervous seeming.
right. I think he's probably was a little nervous talking to anybody, let alone guys with guns that are asking him questions. And I think really he was trying to help. And that's probably how they painted it. Like, hey, we really just need your help. It's
And
trying to
he's
solve
going to
this case.
believe that.
Yeah. And
Mm.
so Michael Alexander, as he's talking to these detectives, he was adamant that he had nothing to do with Leola's murder. I mean, he was even like, she reminded me of my grandmother, and I would never do anything to hurt my grandmother. Like, he was just adamant that he would not have hurt her. And so when detectives started bringing up incidents of violence from his past, he admitted openly that he sometimes goes into what he kind of referred to as like a white rage and would black out for a few seconds and then have no memory of what happened. So he admitted to that, but he also said that he hadn't experienced anything like that for years.
Interesting.
So of course detectives just jump all over this and they're like, hey ding dong, you obviously killed Leola in one of your rage blackouts and you just probably don't remember it. So let's just go ahead and put this case on the solved shelf. Why don't you just admit what you did?
Huh.
So they also told him that a shoe print that was found by the broken window in Leola's home matched his shoes and that they found his fingerprints inside her home. He, of course, doesn't have an explanation for these things. He's like, I've never been to her house, I've never been on her property. So he couldn't explain why those things were found there, but he just continued to be adamant that he didn't do it. Obviously, this is total bullshit, too, that they had this evidence because literally, like, this stuff had not been processed
I was
yet
gonna
from
say, there's
Leola's
no way
home.
that they would have had time.
No, he was taken to the station, like, as the search of his house was
Yeah.
beginning, and so but he doesn't know that they don't just have, like, some detector that just automatically
Yeah, he doesn't know.
yes or no's
He's gonna believe
evidence.
what they say, and legally they can lie.
Yeah, exactly, and so, of course, none of these items taken from his house had even been processed, but they're just telling him, like, "Well, we got this against you, buddy, and this and this." So they used his low intelligence and vulnerability to their advantage, and so they began telling him that there must be 2 Michaels. There's normal Mike, and then there's angry blackout Mike. So they're like, "We're gonna leave you alone in here for a bit. Why don't you talk to Angry Mike? So maybe you and your other ego can get to the bottom of what happened. That the bad side of you can confess, and then you can fill us in on what actually happened."
Oh my god.
So they leave him in there alone and come back and they're like, "Well," and he's basically like, "Yo, I spoke with Angry Mike and he also had nothing to do with the murder." Then detectives are like, "Well, if you didn't kill her, what do you think happened to Leola?"
I don't like that question
I
because they
know.
use it yeah, I need to open another.
Oh, wow. That sounds beautiful
Yeah, this story is already
and cold.
and cold. It's like a refreshing sound.
Yeah. Mhm. So he was like, maybe the killer went to her house and knocked on the front door and she let them in. So they're like, "Well, how do you think she was killed?" And he said, "Bare hands, maybe? Probably with a weapon. I don't know." Like he's giving responses like, "I don't fucking know, but I'll play your game and try and speculate here." So they just keep asking him questions. They're like, "Where was Leola killed?" And he said, "In the living room. She was killed in the bedroom." Detectives kind of viewed this as him changing his story instead of him actually just not knowing any details of the murder. He's just trying to go along with what they're asking him.
During this quote unquote interview, do you know if they were telling him, "Hey, man, we're on your side. You can go home. You just got to tell us what we need to know. Tell us what happened to Leola." Do you know if they were pulling that shit?
I think they were being a little intense with him, just being like, more, "Look, this was obviously you. We've got your DNA." They're pushing this whole angry Mike thing that in his mind he was questioning if he actually did it.
Mhm.
And they're kind of like feeding him little details. A lot, like it's just such bullshit how it went down.
I think she was killed in the living room. Oh, you mean bedroom? Yeah, I meant bedroom. Oh, okay.
Sure. Okay, Colonel Mustard. Like what the fuck are you trying to get him to do? Like they asked him to speculate. So he's obviously trying to come up with different scenarios of what could have possibly happened. He's not changing his story of what he did. he's like, "Oh, well, or maybe this could have happened." And, like, I've heard this in other cases too, and it's just like,
Mhm.
"God damn it. I don't like it." And so I know detectives, can obviously use different tactics to get confessions and they can lie, but it just feels so fucking shitty and it just got shittier. So when asked to provide DNA samples, Michael was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So they did a cheek swab while he was there. He wanted to do whatever he could to help solve the case. So they left the room for 15 minutes or whatever. I don't know if they had to poop or what they were doing, but they left for like 15 minutes, left him alone, and they came back and they're like, "Hey, total bummer, Michael, but your DNA was a match for the evidence found at Leola's." Which this is obviously fucking impossible. Like, you can't process DNA in
In
15
15
minutes.
minutes.
He doesn't know how to defend himself against this supposed evidence.
Mm-mm.
So he's like, "I guess it must have been Angry Mike who did it." And detectives are like, "Well, you are Angry Mike, so you killed Leola." I mean, at that point, Michael's pretty much like, "Well, I guess I did then." And so after hours of being quote unquote interviewed, like you said, they start helping him write a confession.
My God. I mm, I know that police have to do everything that they can to solve crimes,
Yeah.
especially murders, because someone or people have lost their lives. And I know that there are different interview or interrogation tactics that they use. But I think that when you have a potential suspect with significantly diminished mental capacity, I think that there has to be a different rule book or playbook by which they operate because he's going to believe everything that they say. And if they're saying, well, you're Angry Mike and Angry Mike killed Leola, and also we've got your fingerprint, and so you did it. And like, what is Mike gonna do? He's gonna be like, "Well, I guess I did it. You're telling me I did it. I guess I did it."
Yeah. So, and he's trying to be helpful, and it's infuriating. So they start working on this confession, and he said that he knocked on Leola's front door. She answered, and he asked her for some money. And she was like, No." And so he ended up going back to his house and getting a baseball bat. He then went back over to her house, broke a window, and crawled through into her house. He said that he found her in the living room where he punched her, and then they ended up making their way like into the bedroom where he started kneeing her in the ribs and then beat her to death. Like, this was his confession. It just
It already doesn't make sense. Why would he break a window and crawl through when he could just ring the doorbell and have her open the door again?
exactly. Like, none of it made sense and it didn't match the evidence. So at the end of the confession, detectives asked Michael if he had been treated fairly, and he said yes. And then they asked if they had made him
Oh,
say anything that didn't actually happen, and he said no.
oh my God.
Yeah, I want to like fucking punch some people. So investigators had initially contacted area hospitals asking if anyone had come in, with any cuts or injuries around the time of the murder. Someone obviously hurt themselves in the struggle with Leola, or, crawling through this broken window. But after Michael's confession and the discovery of his little tiny scraped knee, they were like, "You know what? Never mind. Scratch all that. We got our guy."
Solvesies.
Yeah, they basically just stopped the investigation.
Fuckers. You know what? So they're trying to make a quick arrest. Okay. They preyed on Michael and they took advantage of his diminished capacity. Okay. They shouldn't have stopped the investigation because they fucking knew what they were doing. They knew that fed everything to him and that his confession was a sham.
Yeah.
They knew that. They knew what they were doing. We have your DNA, we have your footprint, we have your this, we have your that. They didn't have any of that. They knew, but the fact that they actually stopped the investigation or they're like, "Well, we've got our guy."
Yeah.
It's almost like they wanted to just believe the lie and they were way more interested in just like having a C for closed in the books as opposed to actually finding who fucking killed Leola.
Oh,
Ugh.
just fucking hang on, Curry. you're gonna lose it. So, just to add to the shittiness, when the SWAT team had moved in on Michael's house and he was taken for questioning, he wasn't given the opportunity to notify his mother of where he was or what was happening. So, his poor mom, Audra, was freaking out trying to find him. She's calling police, trying to find out where Michael was. She got bounced around from person to person, and finally, someone informed her that Michael wouldn't be coming home anytime soon because he had just confessed to the murder.
And she knows her son has diminished mental capacity. And so she's like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I
And
get that he's a legal adult. He's 20, but really he has the mind of a 12-year-old.
she knows that he must be scared and that he probably can easily be taken advantage of and doesn't really understand what's going on. And she hated that she couldn't be there with him, didn't know where he was. Like, it's just like,
Mama bear.
yeah, just all of it sucked.
Mm. You looking hot? You looking hotter than you
Yes.
were when we started the episode. You doing okay? You
Yeah,
hanging in there?
I'm good.
You're also like, your blood pressure is getting up with telling this story too. I can see
I
it.
know. I look like I'm a little sun-kissed, more maybe like sun-fucked, but
you do. You look glistening.
woo. So, in January of 2013, Michael was charged with first-degree murder, torture, aggravated mayhem, first-degree burglary, and attempted first-degree robbery.
Aggravated mayhem?
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck that is. All I think of is the Allstate commercials, but anyway, um
Yep.
so a few days later, he asked if he could speak with with detectives because he wanted to recant his confession. I think that like
Yeah.
more things have been made clear to him. He was in jail at this point. So Michael was provided a court-appointed attorney, but they were not present during this conversation with detectives. And
Why?
Michael agreed to waive his Miranda rights, again, probably not
Oh.
understanding. At this point, the DNA found at the crime scene and the DNA taken from Michael had been processed, and they were not a fucking match. So detectives started asking him who else was there because instead of just ruling Michael out with that evidence, they're like, he must have an accomplice, right?
Now they have an escalation of commitment here, and now they
They are
arrested him.
doubling fucking down.
Yeah, because if they like go, whoops, sorry, we arrested the wrong guy, they're gonna get backlash from the public by like, okay,
Exactly.
so you spend all your fucking time on this guy and he's not the guy, and now the perp is out in the wind. Like, what the fuck are
Yeah,
you doing? Are you sitting around picking
right.
your noses?
Yeah, so they're like, "So who was with you that night, Michael?" And so he's, like, giving different descriptions of men and giving various accounts of what had happened. He was just super unclear with details and just all over the place. None of it made any sense whatsoever. At one point, he even said that he had watched the murder take place from his yard, like, looking into Leola's house, and even that he had punched the killer as he fled the house. Like, there was nothing consistent. So, basically, it's just, like, a repeat of his initial interview where the detectives kind of offer different details, and then we're asking him to speculate, and then treating it like a confession.
That is goddamn bullshit.
Yeah. So detectives were getting frustrated because they weren't getting like a concrete confession from him with any details that supported that he actually committed this crime. So they ended up telling him that they were going to arrest his mom and his sister because they thought that they weren't being truthful and that they were hiding things, that they needed to get Leola's case solved and closed. And so, of course, he gets scared because he's protective of his mom and his sister. He gets really upset, like, he ended up telling police that night, quote, "I didn't go into the damn house. I don't leave the damn house. I never leave the house. I didn't see anything. You people should be looking for the real person, not at the fucking neighbor. I have my computer on 24/7 sitting next to me. I go on Facebook, I go onto YouTube, I go onto Switch TV. I watch porn for fuck's sake. I don't leave the goddamn house. I didn't murder her." So he's like getting fired up at this point, which pisses detectives off because they're like, we want little Michael to just
Just do what
confess.
we tell you to do, and then
Yeah.
bada bing, bada boom.
Detectives, they got frustrated with him and they left him alone in this interrogation room. And so Michael ended up getting up and he punched the wall and he ends up breaking, it looks like a thermostat on the wall, but it actually has like a hidden camera in it. And so he ends up breaking the camera because he's just pissed off and he's like so frustrated. So he breaks this camera, but the audio was still recording. And so Michael can be heard just ranting about the cops, saying that they were crooked and that they were blaming an innocent man, not false. And a detective could be heard walking back into the room and told Michael that he needed to calm down or he was, quote, going to get his fucking ass kicked.
Wow. Wow.
So 4 days later, on February 5th, Michael had his initial court appearance. And prosecutors announced at this hearing that they would be seeking the goddamn death penalty in
Let me
his
get this
case.
straight. They actually took this through the legal system knowing that the DNA didn't match?
Mhm.
Wow. Okay.
The only evidence that they had was his confession, the confession, quote unquote, that doesn't include any consistent details or match anything that was found at the crime scene. There were no witnesses who saw him leave Leola's house. He had no injuries that would be in line with, the evidence that was found there. And there was nothing tying him to the crime. So capital cases generally take longer to get to
Mhm.
trial just due to endless delays and continuances. And due to the prosecution pretty much scrambling, trying to come up with any evidence for their case, they kept retesting the DNA from the crime scene, hoping that it would match Michael's. Like on the eighth time, it would finally match his. It never did. The DNA found under Leola's fingernails did not match Michael's. The fingerprints found on her bedroom door didn't match Michael's fingerprints. None of his clothes taken from his house had any blood on them. The blood that was found at the crime scene didn't match his. So the trail of blood that went from the crime scene from Leola's house went past Michael's house. The shoe prints found in Leola's house didn't match the size or any style of the shoes that were taken of Michael's. In fact, all of the blood and the DNA evidence found belonged to one person, and it wasn't Michael.
And the prosecutors are like, "No, we're still gonna try this case. We just gotta figure out our angle.
Yeah, so
Clearly,
yeah,
this isn't the guy, but you know what? Someone's gotta go down for it, and why not this guy? Otherwise, we're gonna have to start all over."
right? Yeah, so how they were still planning on even prosecuting him is beyond me, but how they were planning on moving forward with a death penalty case is mind-boggling.
They were willing to put someone to death that clearly didn't commit this crime.
Exactly, just to close the
That's
case.
fucking appalling.
So investigators like doubled the fuck down and they just continued going after him. They decided that they were going to tap Michael's mom and sister's phones, and they actually obtained a warrant for their Facebook content. They
How did
put
they
a
even get these approved?
I don't
They
know.
don't have any evidence to suggest. How did they even, were they lying to the judges and things to get these warrants
I
approved?
don't know. And they even ended up putting a GPS tracker on his mom's car.
Were they working outside of the bounds
I
of,
I don't
oh
know
my
how
god.
many idiots were involved from judges to detectives. Like it's
And
just
no
like
one looked at each other and were like, "Guys, clearly
yeah,
Michael didn't do this. So maybe we should actually look for the real killer." Instead, they're like, "We we can't go back now, so we're just going to make this fit."
it was just such horseshit. They actually ended up trying to get jailhouse snitches to come forward with details to prove his guilt. Like they seriously just went to the jails and approached other inmates where Michael was being held, particularly ones that obviously he like shared cells with. But they're like, "Yo, so did he tell you anything about the murder he committed?" And all of them were like, "What? He never talked about any murder or confessed to committing any crime." It was just like dead end after dead end. So they obviously were just like grasping at straws, trying to find anything that would connect Michael to this murder, but they just came up empty-handed every
Yeah,
goddamn
because he
time.
didn't fucking do it.
Yeah, and so this investigation was a waste of time, resources, money, and simply just steered the case away from finding who actually killed Leola.
If I was Leola's family, I would be fucking pissed.
Yeah, it's like these guys, these detectives, I feel are like why detectives are sometimes referred to as dicks. At what point do you just suck up your pride and go, okay, obviously we are on the wrong path? Anyway, so unfortunately, Michael couldn't afford bail. So he just had to sit in jail waiting for his trial to begin. On August 19th of 2016, after spending 3.5 years in jail,
Stop.
3.5 fucking years, he sat in jail.
Stop. Oh my
He finally made it into a courtroom for what was supposed to be the start of his trial. Instead, prosecutors announced that they were dismissing the case against Michael Alexander due to a lack of sufficient evidence or any fucking evidence at all, let's be real. So Michael, who is now 24 years old, was released from custody and all charges were dropped against him, or at least temporarily, because the district attorney was sure to state that she wasn't completely convinced that his confession wasn't real and wanted to make it clear that charges could still be brought against him at a later date. So
Yeah.
even when the charges were being dropped because they had nothing to prove his guilt, they were still so convinced that he did it that they were gonna just keep trying to nail his ass. Like, this is unfucking believable.
And they waited 3.5 years.
Yes, he sat there for 3.5 fucking years because it was just delays, and they're trying to come up with anything to tie him to this case.
That's fucked up. That is so wrong on so many levels.
Yeah. So then moving on, after they, pissed away years of actually trying to solve the case, the investigators decided to resubmit DNA that was found at the crime scene for the far more advanced familial DNA tracing, which this was right after the time of the Golden State Killer had been nailed
Mm.
based on this. So they're like, let's try it and see what happens. So they submitted his DNA, or, the killer's DNA, and through the testing, they found a 31-year-old female that, they could link, and then using criminal histories, public databases, and other resources, they narrowed their search down to that woman's two brothers and an uncle.
Wow.
And they became very interested in one of those males. This was 29-year-old Armando Arias Quadras, who lived less than a mile from Leola's house. He had a previous criminal record for assaulting his wife while he was intoxicated in 2014, which I believe the assault took place in a hospital waiting room. So he was like beating the shit out of his wife in a hospital. So police began following and monitoring Quadras in March of 2019. And on April 2nd of 2019, police officers were tailing him and they followed him to his weekly Alcoholics Anonymous meeting where he was snacking on some sunflower seeds. And so police were like, boop, we're going to be taking those. And so they picked up some of the seeds that he'd spit out. And they're like, boop, okay, sweet. Putting them in a bag. Thank you. Bye. And so they sent him off for DNA testing. 3 days later, on April 5th, the DNA results confirmed that this turd hole was Leola's killer, or at least that he was in her home the night that she was murdered. The DNA found at her house was a fucking perfect match to this ass wipe.
Was it a
So,
match to the DNA that was under her fingernails?
yes, to every bit, all the blood, everything under her fingernails.
The trail of blood going down the street?
Yes, everything. Any sort of DNA found in that house that wasn't Leola's matched him perfectly. On April 11th, Armando Quadros was arrested for murder and all of the other charges that Michael had been charged with. And just an added kick to the scrot for Michael Alexander. The prosecution announced during a preliminary hearing that they would be seeking life in prison
What?
against Quadras.
What?
So, overwhelming evidence of guilt equals a life sentence, but apparently no evidence at all equals the death penalty.
What in the actual fuck?
Yeah, pretty neato, huh? It's like the
Mm.
kicks just didn't stop in this case.
Oh my god. Mm.
In addition to the physical evidence that was found at the crime scene, Sergeant Brett Slade, I'm sorry, that's not his name.
Love it. Just a random name you've plucked from the universe.
Well, it was close. Sergeant Brent Slade.
God.
Sergeant Philip McPeters. No, just kidding. So Sergeant Brent Slade testified during the trial, and he had some pretty damning testimony. So this sergeant testified that after his arrest, Quadros had told him that he had, quote, stomped somebody.
Stomped somebody?
He had stomped somebody.
Well, now we
And
know
when
how 17 of her however many ribs we have were broken.
exactly. And so when was this, Carrie? This was the night of Leola's murder. And if you're thinking, he what now?
Yeah.
He also told this sergeant, that he had been hospitalized in 2013. So detectives are like, well, we'll look into that a little bit. And they did a little digging. And it turns out that Quadras had been picked up by police officers at 3:28 in the morning on
No.
January 19th of
No.
2013,
Mm-mm.
2 days before Leola's body was discovered. Police
No.
found him on a street corner
Mm-mm.
approximately 300 fucking yards from
Mm-mm.
Leola's house. He was incredibly drunk and bleeding and had
Mm-mm.
collapsed. So someone had obviously seen him, reported it to police, and they were dispatched to go pick him up. An ambulance was called to the scene and
Oh
he
my
was
god.
taken to the hospital for injuries. He had cuts on his arms, swollen knuckles, an injured knee, and he had small cuts and scratches all over his fucking face. So even at 94, Leola fought like fucking hell for her life. And so remember when the police called off the search at the hospitals for any
Yeah.
possible
Yeah.
injuries from the murder?
Yeah.
They had even reviewed dispatch calls to see if injuries had, been reported in those days before, but they never looked further into Quadras. So they likely would have found this fucker just days after the murder if they hadn't honed in on Michael. The
Y-
bleeding drunk man found mumbling about stomping someone just down the street from her house didn't throw up any fucking red flags, especially when there was a goddamn trail of blood from Leola's house that likely led to the exact fucking spot where he collapsed. Like I
Do
don't
you
know how they fucking missed this.
do you know what I am right now?
Hot?
I'm gobsmacked. I'm fucking gobsmacked. I,
Is
I
this not the
am
most like
so
insane
fucking
shit you've
angry
ever
right
heard?
now. It couldn't have been served up like it was served up on a fucking gold-plated platter
Mhm.
with a goddamn neon sign with an arrow pointing, "Here's the person that killed Leola." Same fucking jurisdiction of police officers. No one fucking talks to each other? Like, what? How do you
How did the officers that
don't
found him not go, "Whoa, I wonder if the guy that we picked up and called an ambulance for is the suspect we've been looking for?"
how did this not come up? How did the homicide detectives, who the fuck was on this case, how did they not, like, share, like, "We're looking for a suspect and whatever. We think we've got the guy, but if, anybody else," and then the other fucking traffic cops or patrol officers that picked up Quadros or whatever his name is. Did I say it right? Quadros?
Quadras.
Quadras. How did this get missed?
Yeah,
This is this is like super egg on the police department. I am a fan of police officers, but there's bad apples, and these guys were bad apples.
yeah. Any nugget of this case would have been appalling, but there is like a fucking basket of nuggets.
Oh my god, it's like a goddamn appalling Easter egg hunt.
Yeah. So in 2020, Of course, this was like the heart of fucking COVID. Quadris's trial began. And thankfully, the jury was smarter than most of the other people involved in this case. And they found him guilty of first degree murder. And he was sentenced to life in prison.
Okay, so it wasn't a capital punishment case.
No, they moved forward. They chose to continue with just the life in prison sentence instead of the death penalty.
And I'm not asking that to suggest that I'm pro or against the capital punishment idea. I'm just shocked that they were willing to do that for Michael with no
Exactly.
fucking actually evidence that pointed away from Michael, and they weren't doing the same thing for Quadras. Wow.
It's shocking. So, of course, he appealed, and he appealed the ruling stating that he didn't get a fair trial because of the way the courtroom was set up due to COVID restrictions. So, of course, everyone was wearing masks, and because of social distancing guidelines and regulations at that time, the jurors were actually spread throughout the courtroom instead of being packed together in the jury box. So they're kind of spread out, everyone's masked. And Quadras said that he didn't receive a fair trial because he also had to wear a mask, and that the placement of the jurors didn't allow for them to see the expressions on his face during the trial.
Because that would have made all the difference given the DNA
Yeah.
analysis.
And so
Okay.
they're like, too fucking bad, dummy. And his appeal was obviously denied. Like,
Okay.
but like with all the evidence against him, like a perfectly timed frown seen by the jurors would not have made a bit of fucking difference.
A perfectly timed frown.
So anyway, he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life. Thank God. Michael and his family ended up moving away from Yuba City, and he ended up suing
Good.
Sutter County,
Yeah.
California, the Yuba City Police Department, and the two detectives who
Good.
had forced his confession in
Yeah.
their initial interrogation slash interview, whatever. He was seeking $10.5 million, but
Go,
he
Michael.
he only received a settlement of $50,000 from the county. And no one has admitted any fault or issued any sort of apology to Michael or his family.
Seriously?
Yeah.
How do they sleep at night? Police officers take an oath to protect the public.
Yeah.
And I don't like the bad apples that power goes to their head and then it's just all about what's in it for me, how it's going to look for me if I close this case super fast. Like, and then, because you can't admit that you fucked up, you're going to let an innocent man sit in jail for 3.5 years. And on the day the trial is supposed to start, prosecution drops all charges because there's no evidence. Like,
Yeah.
how do you look at, I guess these people, like, they can look at themselves in a mirror because they're missing some key component of empathy or do what's right even when nobody's looking kind of thing.
Yeah. This case, I wanted to cover it because it, as much as it frustrates me, like it really highlights how investigators can often just take kind of an easy path towards solving a case and just stay on that path without wanting to find the truth. I mean, in this case, they like fucking tripled down.
Fuckled.
S-
I like
God
it.
damn it.
They fucking fuckled.
Yeah, they fuckled down, and they said that, they had the right person without any evidence. And so due to that, like an innocent man who had been manipulated by police spent years in prison, a guilty man went free. Michael's family had to spend more than, 3 years without him while he was held in jail, and they were likely judged and treated poorly because they thought that their son or and brother was a killer and took a precious member of their neighborhood away. And that entire time, Leola's family didn't have any answers or justice for their beloved Dodie.
Hmm.
Wrongful conviction cases are just way too common in this country. And cases where investigators, judges, and prosecutors just adamantly continue going after someone who they have to know is innocent is just infuriating. Like, our justice system has to figure out a way to be better.
And obviously, there needs to be checks and balances because somewhere along the line, in this case specifically, something got fucked up because there should have been a prosecutor saying, "You don't have any evidence to go after this guy. We don't have anything. So no, we're not going to take this to trial because we don't have anything.
Yeah,
He's obviously not the guy." But
right.
the whatever checks and balances our judicial system has in place, it fucking failed Michael in this instance because and it failed Leola and it failed her family. And question, do we ever figure out why Quadras, did I say that right? Quadras?
Mhm. A motive?
Yeah, why did he choose Leola's house? Why did he even go in? Like, what was the purpose of him breaking a window and entering her home and then beating the fucking shit out of her?
I didn't see anything. He was obviously incredibly intoxicated, but I don't know that they ever figured out what the fuck he was doing.
Talk about being an angry drunk.
Yeah.
Poor Leola.
According to the Innocence Project, 28% of suspects who had been exonerated by DNA evidence between 1989 and 2016, 28% of them had given false confessions when being interrogated by police.
Wow, that's a higher number than I would have suspected.
Yeah. And about half of those false confessions came from someone under the age of 21.
Of course.
So, intense interrogation techniques by police can a lot of times really pressure someone to confess to horrendous crimes that they didn't commit, and especially if they have a diminished mental capacity like
Mhm.
Michael, and he was just railroaded and taken advantage of, and it's fucking gross. This case infuriates me. But it's fucking scary that anyone could be imprisoned based on
Mhm.
fucking nothing. If enough people want us to be guilty, they'll make it fucking happen. And unfortunately for people of color, it's even worse. And it just makes me sick to my fucking stomach.
We could talk about inherent good versus evil in humans and why they do what they do and the psychology behind it. And at the end of the day, I think power is can be a big problem with people who are supposed to uphold the law,
Oh,
whether
for
that's a
sure.
police officer or a judge or an attorney or somebody's in the military, like any position of power. I mean, fuck, if you're on like the, community council for your town or something,
Hmm.
positions of power can bring out the worst in people if they don't have the right temperament to be in a position of power.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a goddamn shame.
Yeah.
Damn, that was a ride. I'm glad that we were able to give some airtime to Leola
I
and to
know.
Michael. He was a goddamn victim too.
Yeah. But anyway,
Anyway,
on that low note, thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate you more than you know. And we appreciate you sharing Crime Will Tell with other fellow true crime fans. And wherever you listen to your podcasts, if you can subscribe or follow so you don't miss an episode, that would be great. And we appreciate any reviews and ratings, especially positive ones, that you can throw our way. That helps tremendously. If you have any case suggestions, any questions, anything at all, please send us an email to crimehotelpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram,
YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah. And keep it real. I don't know. What else we got?
I think you nailed it.
Yeah. Okay.
Keep it real.
But
I love it.
anyway, seriously, thank you guys for listening.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
the best.
We feel it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do. And I don't know. With that, goodbye, Carrie.
Goodbye, Jamie.
I think you nailed it.
Hey, you're good.
It's you. Oh my god, hi. Okay, that's good enough, Jamie.
I don't like it.
I might do some peyote.
Hot fucking damn.
I feel like I can hear some sort of something out there.
I swear to God.
Walk away.
I gotta pee so bad. I'm gonna go.